Nick Kuzvas. Thank you for watching the Nick Kuzvas Fishing Channel. This is Nick Kuzvas. I'm your host. Hey, you know, we talked about jerkbaits. I did a video a while ago, and I thought it needed a refresh. So we're going to change things up a bit. You know, it's been a couple years now. New rods, new baits, a lot of new stuff on the market coming up. So I think it's worth chatting about. I'm a trophy specialist, but I also do on-the-water lessons with a lot of my customers, teach them how to use different baits, electronics, all that stuff, how to find fish. And the one thing about jerkbait is probably one of the more complicated techniques. It takes some time. Once you get it down, it's, you know, it just happens out of nowhere. One day you go out and you figure it out. So practice, practice, practice. But this is all about understanding how to pick the jerkbait for a specific situation, condition that you're faced with, time of year. All that stuff makes a difference. That's what we're talking about. We're going to start today. X-Nanahan. Look, we make a lot of different baits, right? We make the X-Nanahan, the X80, the 110 family, which is the 110, the +1, the +2, the junior +1. We make Edo Shiner. We make LBO Max. And then we have a Kanata. So lots of different jerk baits. And then, of course, we have BFS stuff that we're not going to get into right now. And the X-Nanahan is kind of the lighter side of the spectrum. So let's get into that. You know what? I wanted to show you this. Got a mug from a customer of mine. Look at that. Slapped on a picture of my 8+ pounder I caught in the fall. And you know what? I don't know what it is, but the coffee just tastes better. I don't want to date myself. Well, no, actually I do want to date myself. But when I mean date myself, I mean as in time. I just ran this video and I had it in fast motion. So no sound, no nothing. Anyways, got to do it again. So here we go. X-Nanahan. Came out a couple years ago by Megabass. That is your regular X-Nanahan, right? Then we have the +1. As you could see, lips just a little bit longer than that. And then to finish off this family, we have the +2. So much wider lip, much longer lip, obviously deeper. So the X-Nanahan is like 4 foot. The +1 is 6 to 7 feet, 6 feet. And the +2 goes down to 10, maybe even creeps to 11 on a really long cast. We'll get into all the models and what they're used for. But as you could see, like I said, this is not replacing what we already use. This fits a little niche. It gives you the opportunity to throw something a little bit different in situations where you're struggling catching fish on the other one. So that's all we've done. We just made another bait to fit a certain thing. And that's what this next X-Nanahan does. So let me talk a little bit about it. Like all Megabass, we have the weight transfer system. The balls roll to the back. You can see that's why I'm using this one so you can see it. What that does is gives you bomb casts. Those weights go to the back. As you cast, keeps that back perfectly straight. So that longer cast is going to make a big difference. That extra, 10, 15, 20 feet cast even further is going to result in more bites day in and day out. When the bait hits the water, though, then it rolls down. Now those two balls fall into the cavity there. You could see now it's kind of stuck in there. I have to roll it this way for it to fall. So they fall into that cavity and then it's ready for action. The first time I took this bait out, it was post-spawn, fishing some largemouth, and I went to play around with this. Outside edge weeds, pretty shallow. And I made a little cast, just kind of got a feel for it. And this bait came to life in the water. Like, it completely surprised me. I had no idea what to expect. It was unbelievable. This bait not only has like a really hard side-to-side action, but it has this, I guess we call it like a flicker, where it dances this way as you're working that bait. It brings it to life. I was working it on this flat and I had a bunch of largemouth come up. And as I was working this bait to get them to bite it, it amazed me how real that jerkbait looked in the water. I mean, it just looked like a minnow trying to escape 3 or 4 largemouth trying to eat it. Had a great day out there. Had a lot of fun with this bait. The action on it is phenomenal, and it really doesn't take a lot. That's the other part of the body. It slides through the water very, very easily. To me, it is like the post-spawn. It's perfect for post-spawn. 60-degree water temp, a little bit warmer. Those fish are done spawning. Now they're on these flats eating. This thing is money because, again, it's smaller profile, looks more natural to them in that ultra clean, shallow water. I just get more bites. There are situations in that. Don't get me wrong. I've caught lots of fish with the 110, the +1, the Edo Shiner in situations like that. But when those fish are spooky and it's flat water, it gives you something else to throw other than fluff or a small little, tube or a swim bait or a hasdong, like something small and subtle. This kind of fits that niche, but it's a jerk bait. You can have a lot of fun, and it triggers fish when they don't want to bite. That's the key. So this X-Nanahan, I'm going to throw it over shallow, flat, stuff like that. I will throw it if I see the fish are high or eating up in that upper column of the water. I'll tell you this, it's unbelievable in the Great Lakes. There are some. Each lake is a little different. But where I'm from, in Lake Ontario and all that, it's really hard to get a fish to eat a topwater. I mean, they will now and again, but they won't generally. Why they won't come that extra 2 feet, it's beyond me, but they're just not surface eaters very often. This is great. The +1, on the other hand, again, gets a little bit deeper. But the difference, this one too, is a little different in the action, is that it just slides a little bit longer. That longer lip just allows it to glide a little bit, very similarly to the +1 in the 110. The other thing I like to do with this, you can actually do a little bit of depth control with it, and you could do this with any bait, but really the angle of your rod. So if I'm fishing like an edge where it's shallow, or maybe some emergent weed early in the year, like I would with the X-Nanahan, but I'm on that edge and it drops off pretty steep, and I'm 45 in it, and I want to keep it up around the weeds, and then when I come off, I want it to get a bit deeper. I can work that bait and keep it shallower by hitting that rod at 10 o'clock, and that'll keep it from diving down into the weeds. Once I get it to the edge, then I can drop my rod and get that max depth, maybe get a couple of those fish that are hanging right on that edge. This is where I love the +1. Again, you can work this bait fast. It's very, very easy. Great bait for that situation. And then again, a little bit deeper. If I'm on a 10-foot flat or whatever, I want to try and get it down 6, 7 feet. This would be the choice then. The +2 is the deepest version of the X-Nanahan. I love this bait when I'm scoping out deep water, 15, 20-foot flats, 20 plus. You get this bait down 10, 11 feet, and you're trying to get those fish to rage. You see them on the scope, you see them on your down imaging or whatever, and they're up off the bottom, a little more aggressive. This little bait will catch them. Now, don't get me wrong. In that situation, I will use a +1 or even a +2. There are situations where that bait is better, but on those calm, flatter days where they just seem a little bit more spooky, something in this profile, again, profile is so key, smaller profile in this clear water that we fish is going to get more bites generally, particularly on those calm days. This one really gets them. I love it. And, there's a couple of tricks I'll do. If you want that bait, because these things are slow float, you can add like a little weight down here, whether it's a Zappu or whatever, one of those little weighted tapes, somewhere between that front hook and the throat, depends. Obviously, the closer to the front you're going to have, the more tip you're going to have. Or you can also try adding one bigger hook to the front. It's going to scuff up your bait a little bit more, but that'll add some weight, keeping it either suspended or a real slow fall, and it allows you to keep that bait in the fish's face longer. Again, clear water, different situation. When those fish are a little bit spooky, try going to a smaller profile in the X-Nanahan, and you're going to catch more fish. Now, ooh, I told you these hooks are sharp. Setup is one of the most important things, and I talk about it in my seminars, I talk about it with my customers on the water, setup, 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 ultra important. Having the right rod, reel, and line combination is going to make things better. It's going to make things easier. You're going to fish that bait more efficiently if you have the right setup, right? Everything kind of balance. I always like to say it balances out your presentation. If your rod's too heavy, if it's too big for that bait, you lose feel, you lose what you're doing with it. If it's too light, then the bait all of a sudden overworks the rod. So balancing it out is very important. My favorite rod for this X-Nanahan, and I sort of found this by accident, is the Whippet. I actually got this rod for a finesse technique, and then, you know, when I had the X-Nanahans, I'm like, wait a minute, this might be the right one. This is an 6.6 F2 fast action. Because that bait slips through the water so easily, I do like that little bit faster tip, right? So, you know, this natural bend, that fast action right there, that's where you connect with the bait at that point. So when you're moving that rod and that tip's bowing back, it starts to stiffen up right about there, giving you really good action without having to pull that rod too much further. I like it with this bait. It gives me better connection with the bait, better feel. Of course, once you get past that, there's a lot of belly bend, and that belly bend is very important when you're throwing jerkbaits for a couple of things. One, your casting distance. If that midsection is too stiff, man, it's just going to be hard to throw a small bait. You're going to lose a lot of distance. So having that bend gives you that whip back, almost like a bow and arrow kind of effect. Allows that bait to fly out. The other thing it's going to do now is when you're fighting a fish, and you know the way smallmouth are, they get crazy, that whole rod will bend down, not allowing the fish to get any leverage and throw hooks as easy as they would if there was some resistance there. That's key. It's not just about the tip. A lot of customers, they're like, oh, I got a soft rod. They get a lot of tip here, but then it really stiffens up in this midsection, and it just makes it hard to do anything with a small light bait. So I like that belly bend, super important for not just casting, but actually fighting the fish and getting them to the boat. You know, I'll pair this with like a Daiwa Kage 2000. It just fits this rod really nice, but anything you use, 2000 seems to be it. There might be some situations where 25 will work, but I think a 2000 fits it. And then as far as the line goes, I talk about this actually a lot, and I'm not affiliated with them in any way, but Verivass makes a braid called a Super Trout PE. I get it in a number 8. It's super thin, super supple, casts like a dream, and strong. Like I think that number 8 is 16.7 pounds or something. Like it's crazy, crazy. It looks like it's 5-pound test, but super strong. And our FG knot 6 or 7 pound test are fluorocarbon. You know, FC Sniper, Shooter, and Sunline, both of them are really good. Depends. Some people like one over the other, but each one of those are very high quality fluorocarbon. Or, you know, like the Tatsu by Seagar is another really good one. Length of leader, it kind of depends. I play around with it. Obviously, the longer the leader, more stretch you have. That's going to affect how you work your bait. The less fluorocarbon you have, the easier it's going to be for you to pull it. It just kind of depends. Everybody's a little different in your cadences and stuff like that. Like I get customers asking me about cadence. There's no such thing as a good cadence. The good cadence, I always say, is the one that's catching fish. So I'm always playing around with that. But the length of your fluorocarbon will have something to do with that. If you're looking for a bait caster, one that might be interesting is the Kasumi 611 or 611 Kasumi. I think it's called a P5. It's 611 F2.5. It has a slow to regular taper, so you're going to have to pull that rod a little bit more. It's a fun rod to fish. To be honest with you, I haven't actually had a customer that had it. I don't even own it. It's a nice rod. It'll be, again, because that bend goes further down in the shaft, in the blank, you're going to have to pull that a little bit more, but probably a super fun rod to use. I think the bait finesse is going to be too much for this. You're kind of like that 1/4 ounce is right at the bottom of its scope. So, you know, I wouldn't Yeah, I think that you know, the 611 Kasumi 611 will be the deal there, or this Whippet. Now, if you're not in a budget for a P5, then I would look at possibly, like when I first took the bait out, I didn't have this rod, so I was using the Whip Snake, Levante, or Double X. I can't remember which one. It worked the bait, no problem. Again, you don't need a lot to get that bait to move, and of course, both those rods have real nice bend, helping with not just casting, but getting fish to the boat. So that's a fun rod. But honestly, most cases, I would say spinning is the way to go. That's the deal. Obviously, these P5s are very special rods. I'm not going to get into, you know, the construction, all that. We'll do that in another video. But they just have, you know, I'm looking for a rod that's got, you know, what we call dampening. That initial, or when you're working that bait, your rod's being bent and it's being slapped back into its normal form. I don't like a lot of wobble in the rod. That's what dampening is. It cuts that all out. It's rather than doing this, it's more like boop, and it goes right back. Faster retention rate, getting back to its form, so it doesn't mess up with my cadence, right? If that rod wobbles too much, it just messes up, particularly if I'm trying to work the bait fast. If you're working it slower, like in the spring and stuff like that, that might be okay, but when I'm working it fast, I like a blank like this. So this P5 Whippet is the deal. Great rod. And again, you can use it for other stuff too. I use it for some bottom contact baits because of its fast action, very light and sensitive, wicked, wicked rod. You know, I talked about the bait and when I really like to throw it, you can absolutely catch lots of fish. It's got the right profile to do it in the spring. It just, to me, it moves fast. And there's situations, in the colder water period where that will be okay. So, you know, it'll be like, because it moves quickly, it'll be like 2 pops, boop, boop, and get it to, you know, boop, boop, and it stop. And then they'll let it sit for a long time. Some days that bite will be better than the pull. You know, when they like that pull action, you know, just more real subtle, I prefer the juniors, the 110 juniors or the +1s. But if they want it a little quicker, don't get me wrong, those are good too. But because of its profile, small, you know, shallow, when they're a little bit spooky in the cold weather, you know, the X-Nanahan will be good too. You just got to be real careful with how fast you work it. You overwork it, you work it too fast, you're just not going to get bit as much. So something to think about. That's it, guys. That's the X-Nanahan. If you guys are in the shop, stop by, pick up a couple. I think it's 14 colors in the X-Nanahan and 13 colors in the +1 and +2. Like all Megabass, gives you lots of options to cover any kind of water condition that you're faced with. Go have some fun with it. I promise you, you're going to catch some fish on it. And yeah, have a good time with it, man. It's all about learning. The more arrows you can put in your quiver, the better you're going to be in the end. And, you know, I've always said it, you always want to be a better angler when you get off the water than you were when you first got on it. So thank you very much for watching, guys. Please subscribe, like, share. I think it's down there or up. You'll see it when you watch the video. All right. If I don't see you at the shows, I will definitely see you on the water. But hey, not on one of my spots, all right? Okay. Have a great night or great day or great morning whenever you're watching this video, and we will talk to you soon. See you.